I have this problem with Sass. It drives me up a wall. It's you have a media box, or you have something like a component that you've created, and then there's something that you have to do to it where you modify it somehow. You need another class that does something different, right? And that code that modifies all these other elements is 50 miles away from all the other code that you like that lives with it. It drives me up a wall. Let's fix it today. Here we go. Hey everyone, so let's dig into this problem real quick and let me try to explain it just a little bit better. So right here on this side, on the HTML side here, you'll see that I have a media box that I've created. This is just kind of a standard thing, right? Media box, it's got some elements in there, content and a media element. And all I'm doing is it's just a grid, and we've put these two things side by side, right? So you have your picture or whatever, video, and then you have some text on the other side of it. Great. Now, whenever you do create something like this, you'll learn really quickly that you're going to have somebody else on your team who says, hey, can you flip that also? I'd love the flipped version of it. So just you kind of just end up building this thing so that way that it's reversible really quickly, because somebody's going to want the opposite of what you've done. So it's easy to do. In this case here, I have these two grid template columns, one FR and two FR. And I want to reverse it. So I've created a what I use as another class, just a reverse class. So the way I do I use BEM style, block element modifier. So if you look back over here at the HTML, that's a block. This is how I do my elements, and a modifier would look like this. I'd say media box reverse. So that modifies the media box itself. Now, this isn't 100% correct yet, because all I've done at this point is I have changed the sides of the column. So now I have, instead of 1 and 2, I have 2 and 1. So I haven't moved the picture yet. That's easy to do, though. All I have to do up here is say dot media box content order 0. And boom, there we go. So it's flipped. This is the way now I can have all of my content flipped around whenever I need to do anything. So if you're just using this normally, you'd say media box like that, and that's the order that everything would be in. And if I want to reverse it, I just hit media box reverse. So boom, one class. That's okay. There's no problem here really. But I have just, this is my little gripe with this thing. And it is kind of a small gripe, but I wanted to fix it. So this media box content being inside of this reverse drives me nuts. Why? Because I don't think that's the right place for it. I've created this this element called media box content, and that's where I have all the styles for it. Now, this is a contrived example, obviously, right? So it's just, there's only two things in here. But I want this to be in here. I want anything that happens to the media box content element to show up in the exact same place in my code. Now, again, being that this is so small, you could just say, well, what's the harm in just doing this? It's fine, right? And yes, you're right. Sure, I'm making a mountain out of a molehill on this teeny tiny example because it's just a contrived example. But in the real world, you're going to have a lot of code in these things, and moving that might not be so easy, right? Or you might have other elements that potentially should be kind of close together and clumped together that are now really far apart because you've decided to put this big honkin' reverse thing somewhere in the middle of your script. So I don't know, just something about this has always driven me crazy. And it's really, I mean, it totally is Sass's fault. It's because the first time I used Sass, I was the main benefit I got from Sass, or the thing that made me like jump to it, was when I saw media queries. Now, a normal media query is done like this. You have to go kind of to the bottom of the page, right? Because you don't want to, you want to clump them all together. And if this was just pure CSS, right? Pretend this was just CSS. You'd want to put this right at the bottom of the page and have all of your media query styles clumped together, so that way you can just do it all in one place. I would say at media min with 500 pixels, and then I would say dot media content. Let's just pretend we're doing something in here. I don't know. Let's make the border 3 pixels solid and blue. So I would end up doing something like this. Did I not do that right? Let me see what I missed here. Media content. Oh, because I didn't have this has got to be media box, sorry. So media box content. Boom, there we go. So that's what you have to do when you're doing CSS, right? Because you want everything together and you want it all at the bottom of the page because you don't want something else above it to override it. So all the media queries go at the bottom. This was annoying when you started doing it, right? Because now you have to like always kind of scroll and you're trying to remember what you did from at the top of the page. You had to scroll back to the bottom and copy and pasting stuff. And it was annoying. Sass solved this problem for us by just saying, hey, you know what? Take that out of there and drop it right here. Get rid of this guy. And there we go. So don't mind the grossness of my code here. Like my indenting style is getting a little bit messed up, but this made things so much nicer, right? Because now you can have all your media queries where they belong in the code. And you can look at this content element that I created and you can say, okay, what's going on here? Well, whenever it starts off with a red border and it at some point at 500 pixels or larger screen size, the border becomes blue. And it's all right there. I don't have to try to find it. I don't have to see if maybe this exists. Because again, if you're talking about a really long CSS file or a really big CSS file, this may be like, 400, 500, 600 lines down the page. You don't even know if you're coming into this the first time that this may have some styles that you got to like override or do something with. So it's just, to me, it drives me up a wall. This has made things, this is one of those like developer experience things that just makes life a little bit easier for you when you're working. And you can see how the code is generated right here. It now just plunks it right under here. So the complaint from other developers was, well, now you're going to have like a billion min with media queries all over the place. Yeah, but we have ways of fixing that too. So you can use post CSS and do some stuff to actually just clean that up and condense these all nicely. So to me, that's not really a complaint. It's fixable. Great. I love this. This is awesome. But when I see this now and I'm using this code, it drives me nuts that I have this media box content living outside of the content area. I want to clump them all together again. So I set about solving that problem. Again, this is not a major problem in any way, shape, or form. It's just one of those little things that always has driven me nuts. So I created a Mixin. I'm going to use right here, right now. I'm going to delete this part right here. Remember, that was order 0. I want the reverse thing to stay where it is because this is doing something. So this is saying media box reverse. And when it reverses, please change the grid template columns to the other way. Okay, so that part is good. I'll keep that there. You can move it wherever you want to do. Now what I want to do is go up here and I want to say at include when, oops, if I can spell, parent is dot media box content. Oh, not content. Sorry, I'm picking the wrong thing. When media box is media box reverse. Order is 0. And boom, there we go. That is the correct placement of this now to me. So if you look at the code real quick, what it does is it's just the same one-liner that you saw before that was down there is now in this position right here. To me, this makes perfect sense in terms of where the CSS should be too, and where, what this is doing now and where it's located. So I can say inside of here now, okay, what is this content element doing? How is this working? What are the things that are going on with it? Well, it's got a red border. It has an order of 2, except for when I have some sort of parent class called media box reverse. When I see media box reverse in my HTML, like I do right here, that means the order of this content element is now 0. So this becomes the first thing, and okay. Oh, and by the way, now there's also a media query here, so I can see that there's a media query there. Great, okay. And then you can kind of go on with your life. And if you need to make changes to that thing, you make all the changes right there for this element. And you're done. And that's it. Nothing is somewhere else. You don't have to go find and try to hunt down where your styles might be for this thing. It's all right there. This include, or this mixin, also works inside of media queries. So just drop that in here real quick so you can see that, yes, this is going to work correctly inside of a media query. So it's a super simple little mixin. I'm going to show it to you in a second, but let's move this out. Let's just take this out of here. And call that there. Okay, so let's take a look at the mixin. It's called when parent. So the idea is kind of like it's a English statement. You're like, okay, so when parent, you can think of, you could call it when parent is or when parent has. So when parent has media box reverse, and you keep the dot there, so you know it's a class. You could change that to the pound sign if you wanted to have an ID for whatever reason. Don't use IDs, but you could if you wanted to. You can actually put anything in here, any normal CSS property you can put in here. So if I want to say when this is that, and there's something else in here, you can see I can do that. Or if it's media box reverse plus dot, let's say first to whatever, I can, you can do kind of anything you want in here and it'll work and it'll show up correctly, provided you have the right HTML to back it up. But right now I just have the one class. So when parent is media box reverse, add these classes, do these classes, whatever you want to say. So here it is. This is the whole thing for me. This line right here, all this is doing is a string replacement because I use the colons inside of my code. You don't have to use those colons. And if you don't use the colons, then you could probably just rip that line out. It's just making sure that if I have a colon in there, I've escaped it, and that's it. So that's not even really super important. The important part is down here. Well, let's take a look real quick at the parameters. So we have the parent selector. That's what I'm grabbing in. And then we have this extend false, which we'll get to in a second. But the other main one is this thing where it says child ampersand. So, okay, remember those. Here's where the whole thing works. We're using an at root. So if you're deeply nested, we're going to just kick this right out to the top level. So it's now at rooting. It's going to be sitting at the root level. So that means if you're nested inside of, like, deeply nested inside of things like this code is, because this guy here is nested inside of a media box, or inside of a media box, inside of a content thing. So theoretically speaking, it would, if you didn't have that ampersand, or if you didn't have the at root, then what this would really want to look like is media box content dot media box reverse dot media box content again. So you need that at root in order to just bring to just get rid of that first media box content area, because you want it nested. You don't want it nested. You want it at the bottom, at the very base. All right. And then we say parent selector. Well, that's the selector you just gave it. So that is media box reverse in this case. So that's what we want there. And then child, and child is the ampersand. Now this is funny because a lot of people I've talked to, they think this is, not a lot of people, but a bunch of people I've talked to in the past have thought that this was some sort of just concatenation device in Sass. They never realized that this was something else. So I've seen people before think that that's all this is really doing is concatenating the word media box with, in this case, content, or down here with this colon reverse or media. And that's, I don't know how because I think this is the way a lot of people use this. They see the ampersand and they think concatenation, that must be what it's for, but that's not what it is. It is actually a shorthand essentially for the parent selector. So this is going to say, hey, whatever is whatever the parent selector is, whatever the parent element is, give me that, and replace this ampersand with that element or that thing. So in our case, we're now going to turn whatever the parent was into the child. So we now say, hey, you're the text we wrote here, media box reverse, that's the parent. And we're going to use the parent selector to grab, well, what's the parent selector of this? It's content, but it's also content, and this has a parent selector on a media box. So it's going to grab media box -- content and turn that into the child element for us. And boom, that goes right there. And that becomes now over here, you can see media box reverse media box content. And then just the at content, whatever is in there, gets dropped inside of here, and boom, we're done. That works. This piece of code that I'm showing you here, just this way, works 95% of the time for me. There are a couple of cases where, and the edge cases are weird, so I don't even want to necessarily bring them up too much, but I do want to just mention that every now and then there's this weird edge case where I do need to do some sort of extending of the parent of, well, what I'll call is the child class, which is the parent class. So every now and then I might need to do some sort of extending on that. And it doesn't happen often, but it happens enough where I actually want to have this device in here where I say, hey, by default, we're just not going to do any extending. However, if the need should arise, I'm going to want to make sure I have the ability to just do this extend. So I can change that to true. And if I do that, you see down here, if extend is true, now we just say at extend child, which in this case would be the media box content. So let's just do that here so you can see it real quick, what that does. So a couple extra lines show up. So now you can see we have this is how the extend works in Sass, where you have now media box content, which is that, and you also have this media box reverse, media box content. That's what extend is doing. So we now have all these. It's now taking the border red, order 2 and order 0 thing and doing the override. So that's how that works. It's a slight downside, I guess, if you want to call it this way, with the way the extend is working now, to the way that the media queries work in Sass is that it just says, well, okay, it almost uses the parent selector also. I think actually, I bet you under the hood it does whatever the parent selector does, kind of the same thing here to get this at media to work correctly, because it copies in this exact same element here. So basically whatever that is what's going to, like, whatever's there on that line gets copied into your media queries too. So boom, there you go. You have that there now and that there now. To me, you're not looking at a million lines of extra code here or anything, or even like really, it's not even one extra line of code there. So it's just a bit of extra on the same line. I don't find this to be egregious or anything, so I don't really care that it's there. I don't find it to be like something that you have to worry about too much. But again, 95% of the time, I don't even need to do that extend, but just there are some cases where I need that extend to do something for me. So if that's the case, great, I use it. If not, don't worry about it. That's it though. That's the whole Mixin. And like I said, it's just been something that it's just a silly little thing that has driven me crazy for so long, because I've always wanted these elements kind of clumped together. And finally, I just sat down and did it. I did this about 3 months ago, let's say, at this point. Yeah, give or take 3 months ago. And I started using it in a really large project that is going to be pushed to production in about 2 or 3 weeks at this point in time. I've been using it there, and it has been excellent. I've loved it. It's made my life just easier in terms of if I have to go back and edit something I haven't seen in a while, everything's there. I don't have to like try to hunt and find where I have all these modifiers, because I love the way I really write my CSS. I really enjoy writing my CSS this way, where I have modifiers and then I don't have to add too many extra classes to other things. I want the modifier to kind of be able to, what I kind of think of it as, like, set the tone for what is going on in the rest of the code. So this when parent Mixin has just made my life a lot easier. And that's it. And again, like I said, the whole thing is super simple. We're not really looking at a lot of code to do this. It's just, at the end of the day, it's these bits of lines right here. That's the whole thing. So I'm going to make this gist available. I'm in Sassmeister right now, so I'll put I can save this as a gist, and I'll save this, and I'll point you guys to the URL for this page in my description of the video. So that's the whole thing. Let me know what you think. If this is something you would use, if this is kind of the way you write your code. Yeah, I just kind of really like it. It's been helping me write, I think, kind of cleaner Sass code. And yeah, it's awesome. So thank you very much for watching. Have a wonderful day.